Hi, I'm Tim from Cooking Light. I'm here to show you how your pasta water is going to take your average everyday supermarket jar spaghetti sauce and turn it into the best pasta dish you've ever had. Just with a couple of quick, simple techniques you can do on any particular weeknight. To begin with, we've got a pot full of pasta boiling. One thing you might notice here that's different from how you may ordinarily do pasta is that there's not a ton of water here. And that's a myth that's endured generations, but in the past few years, we've learned different. You don't need gallons and gallons of water to cook your pasta because it's not going to stick. That, I think, was the main concern for using that much water. The fact is, you put your pasta in, and if you give it a couple of twirls for the first minute or so, it'll get done releasing a lot of its starch. It's not going to stick.
What happens when you use a little bit of water rather than a lot of water?
The real benefit to that is that you get a greater concentration of pasta starch to water. Because if you're using a ton of water, you're only going to get, there's only so much starch that the spaghetti is going to give off. And so if it's going to be diluted, it's not going to do your dish very much good. This way you're going to have a very concentrated pasta liquid that's going to really, really make this sauce nice.
Will this work with whole wheat pasta?
Yeah, you know, it will work with whole wheat pasta, but I'd advise you to know your whole wheat pasta, because whole wheat pasta performs differently from semolina pasta. It gives off starch differently, it absorbs more liquid, and it varies a lot from brand to brand. If you're really familiar with a particular kind of whole wheat pasta and how it behaves, go right ahead. Otherwise, you might want to start trying this technique with your favorite semolina brand. You'll notice in this other pan that I've got is just my jarred pasta sauce. At Cooking Light, we like to recommend a lower sodium pasta sauce, meaning specifically under 350 milligrams of salt per half cup. It just so happens that one of my favorite brands has just that much, which is fantastic. So you can find it. It doesn't have to be. It's not. You don't have to go to a health food store to find this particular.
Looks like you've been heating that for a while.
I have been heating it for a while, and the point is twofold. You're going to jump start the process once the spaghetti's done. It's going to go right into here, and you're not going to have to wait for it to heat back up again. But even more importantly, because we're using pasta water, you don't want this mixture getting too soupy, so I'm taking some of the water out of the spaghetti sauce as it is
so no
right
runny
now.
American pasta.
That's right. That's right. We're going to dry it out just a little bit and then rehydrate it with the delicious pasta water. There's usually also another trick that I'm going to show you when the time comes. Not to get too far ahead of myself, but you're going to love this. A little extra virgin olive oil is going to enrich the sauce beyond your wildest dreams. Sometimes a lot of chefs use butter. You can use butter if you like, but you're going to get the same amount of richness with less saturated fat. And since we're also going to be finishing with cheese, we figured why not use extra virgin olive oil. We're going to emulsify the olive oil into the sauce once we add in the pasta liquid. So our pasta right now is not quite done, and that's exactly how we want it. If your box says it takes 8 minutes to get it done, cook it for 7 minutes. And then with your tongs into the pan of hot sauce. You don't want it to be entirely done because it still has about a minute or so of cooking left to do in the sauce. Part of the reason you're cooking it in the sauce isn't just to enrich the sauce, but it's to flavor the noodles. Because if you're just going to put sauce on top of noodles, you're going to have two flavors, distinct flavors. They're not going to ever meld together. It's not going to be a unified, glorious pasta dish like it should be. Now I'm going to take about a quarter cup. It's not essential, the measurement. Just do what you feel you need to do to hydrate it a little bit.
So what are you looking for? Like loose?
What I'm looking for is for it to be a little bit loose. right now. Not totally soupy, and I don't want it to be, it doesn't need to be covered up entirely. But you'll see how over here, that's wet. Well, that's going to be less wet. In fact, it's going to, and it's going to thicken up because we're going to bring this back up to a boil. I had it on low heat before just to dry it out some, but we're going to bring it back up to a boil. And now, I'm going to hit it with a little extra virgin olive oil. Maybe a couple teaspoons, maybe a tablespoon, whatever your taste is. We're going to mix.
So, but there's oil already in the sauce, right?
There is oil in the sauce already, and so you'd think, well, that's redundant, right? Why would you add oil if there already is oil? The fact of the matter is, this is a principle of cooking called layering flavors. So that oil that's in the sauce, it's in there for a purpose. It adds flavor, but it's got a very separate and distinct flavor from the oil that I have just added in, and this is just going to add another layer, another dimension to the sauce, and make it all the more complex. And complexity is really good for a simple dish.
So, does the tomato sauce like this count as a vegetable serving?
That's me. And that's the USDA too. Doesn't ketchup count? I mean, but you know what? I would have to defer to our nutritionist, but I'd have to think that it is, right? I mean, there are chunks of vegetables here. Pardon me, I'm not a nutritionist. I'm just a food obsessive. But there are tomatoes in there, and lots of them, chunks of them, right? That's, you know.
So Tim, if I want to make this for dinner tonight,
Yeah.
what kind of wine would I pair with it?
Well, the obvious answer would be a red, an Italian red. But you don't have to be so obvious. You can, we've learned over the decades to go with our tastes. I mean, an acidic, sharp white might not be the way to go. But maybe if it's a warm summer night, maybe a rosé might be the way to go, a fruity rosé. Perhaps. I still would probably stick with a red though. Just something hearty that's going to stand up to the tomato flavor and the acid that's in the tomato flavor. Now you can see how the sauce is drying out some in the best possible way.
Could you do this with homemade sauce too?
You could, you absolutely could. You just you follow just the same procedure. It's really the important part is just using your pasta water, and then you're emulsifying, as I say, the olive oil. You can see how it's bubbling here. The pasta water and the oil are bubbling together, creating the emulsification. And emulsification is a bond between two things that ordinarily wouldn't go together. Oil and water don't, they separate, but when you boil them hard enough, for long enough, they become one glorious entity. Now you'll see how this is about ready to roll here. Am I going to add the cheese now? I am not going to add the cheese now because I don't want the cheese to break. I don't want it to curdle. I don't want it to knot up and turn into little chunks of dairy protein. I want to let it cool for just a second in the serving bowl. I've got the cheese. This is Parmigiano Reggiano, which I find the best cheese for this kind of thing. And it's finely grated on a microplane. The reason I did it on a microplane is because that way it will disperse through the dish most evenly, and melt in a matter of seconds.
So you kept your pasta water on the stove, no draining. What are we going to do with that?
What we're going to do with that, well, a lot of people throw it out. I would suggest don't throw it out. There are a million uses for this. Keep it. You can keep it in those little ice cube trays. You can keep it in a Ziploc bag in your freezer. You can keep it in quart containers in your freezer. Freeze it for up to 6 months. I would suggest the ice cube trays though, because that way you can use smaller portions of them. And when you have something like a soup or a stew that needs a little bit of extra thickening to it, the pasta water is going to do the trick. Or sauce, if you're doing a pan sauce and you know it's too late to add flour or anything like that. a little of the pasta water will do the trick, and it will keep it from breaking. So now I'm going to just add in my cheese to the dish. Just stir it up so that it's evenly distributed. You see how by not adding it while it's in the pan and boiling hot, that allows the cheese to melt into the sauce. So the sauce is essentially the tomato sauce, the olive oil, the pasta water, and the cheese all blended together to make this gloriously silky sauce that you see coats every noodle evenly, and the noodles absorb that sauce rather than having it just sit on top of it and have noodle flavor and sauce flavor. You've got the entire pasta dish there.